Somewhere between the ashes of two destroyed cities and the birth of two future nations, there's a story the church rarely preaches on. A story involving a righteous man. Yes, the Bible actually calls him righteous. Alcohol, deception, and his own daughters. This is the story of Lot. And by the end of this video, you'll understand why Genesis 19 is one of the most uncomfortable chapters in all of Scripture, and why it's still there, unedited, thousands of years later. Before we get to the controversial part, let's set the stage. Lot is the nephew of Abraham, the same Abraham God made covenant promises to. Lot chose to settle near Sodom, a city so notorious for wickedness that its name became a byword for sin itself. Genesis actually describes Lot as a righteous man, tormented, we're told, by the immorality he witnessed daily. He's not a villain here. He's presented as someone trying to hold on to integrity in a corrupt environment. That matters because it makes what happens next even more jarring. God sends two angels, appearing as men, to warn Lot Sodom and Gomorrah are about to be destroyed. Lot hosts them, and that night, the men of the city surround his house demanding to abuse the visitors. Lot even offers his own daughters to the mob to protect his guests, a detail that's disturbing in its own right and worth sitting with because it tells us something about the world these daughters grew up in. It was violent, patriarchal. Women's safety was negotiable currency, even to a father the text calls righteous. The angels blind the mob, then urge Lot's family to flee before judgment falls. Lot hesitates. The text says the angels literally have to grab his hand and pull him out. Fire and sulfur rain down. The cities are annihilated. And then, the famous moment. Lot's wife looks back. She becomes a pillar of salt. Just like that, the daughters lose their mother, their home, their community, and their entire understanding of the world, all in one night. Lot and his two daughters end up living in a cave in the mountains near a small town called Zoar. They're isolated, traumatized, and, according to the text, the daughters believe something extraordinary, that there is no man left on earth to give them children. Now, pause here. This is a strange belief. They'd just come from a town, Zoar, where presumably men existed. So why would they think humanity itself had ended? Scholars have floated a few explanations. Some think the trauma of witnessing total civilizational collapse, cities incinerated, their mother killed, created a kind of catastrophic end-of-the-world thinking. Others suggest it reflects the isolation of their new life in the cave, cut off from any social contact. Either way, the text presents their reasoning, however flawed, as sincere. They were not villains plotting evil for its own sake. They believed they were the last hope for continuing the human family. Here's where the story becomes genuinely difficult. Genesis 19 verses 31 to 35 says the older daughter proposes a plan to her sister. Get their father drunk with wine and lie with him so that they may preserve his lineage. On 2 consecutive nights, they carry out the plan. The text is explicit that Lot was unaware, quote, he did not know when she lay down or when she arose, close quote. This detail matters theologically. The narrative frames Lot as intoxicated to the point of no awareness or consent, which shifts moral responsibility onto the daughter's plan rather than depicting mutual wrongdoing. Both daughters become pregnant. The older gives birth to a son named Moab, meaning in Hebrew something close to from father. The younger names her son Ben-Ami, son of my people. There's no thunderbolt from heaven, no angel showing up to condemn them on the page. The text simply moves on. And that silence is exactly why this story has generated centuries of debate. So how do we make sense of a story the Bible records without an explicit moral verdict attached? A few major interpretive threads. First, the polemic against Israel's enemies theory. Moab and Ammon became 2 of Israel's most persistent rival nations. Many scholars believe this origin story functioned as an ancient insult, a way of delegitimizing these neighboring peoples by tracing their ancestry to an act of incest. In the ancient Near East, origin stories were often weaponized this way. Second, the narrative irony and consequence theory. Some theologians argue Genesis is showing the moral aftershock of Sodom itself. Lot chose to live near a corrupting culture. His family absorbed distorted values about survival, sexuality, and desperation. The daughter's plan in this reading is a tragic echo of the very corruption Lot thought he'd escaped. Third, the trauma response reading, more common in modern scholarship. This lens treats the daughters not as calculating villains, but as young women who had just survived catastrophic loss and whose reasoning, however disturbing to us, emerged from genuine crisis thinking, not malice. The Bible itself doesn't pick one of these for you. It presents the event and lets later history and later readers wrestle with it. This isn't a story that ends in Genesis 19. Moab and Ammon become full nations, and they reappear constantly throughout the Old Testament. The Moabite king Balak later hires the prophet Balaam to curse Israel. Moabite women are blamed for leading Israelites into idolatry in the book of Numbers. Ammonites go to war against Israel multiple times across Judges and Samuel. And yet, here's the twist that makes this story even more complicated. The Moabite lineage eventually produces Ruth. Ruth, the Moabite, becomes the great-grandmother of King David, placing a descendant of this controversial knight directly into the ancestral line that leads, according to the New Testament genealogies, to Jesus himself. So a story that begins in trauma, deception, and taboo somehow threads its way into one of the most redemptive lineages in the entire Bible. That's not something storytellers include by accident. So why does this matter now, thousands of years later? Because Genesis doesn't sanitize its heroes. Abraham lies about his wife twice. Jacob deceives his father. David commits adultery and orchestrates a murder. And Lot's family ends in a cave, in an act most modern readers rightly find deeply disturbing. The Bible's refusal to airbrush these stories is arguably one of its most distinctive features as ancient literature. It doesn't present a sanitized origin myth where the ancestors are flawless. It presents real, broken people shaped by trauma and bad decisions, and then shows how a bigger story unfolds anyway, not because of their choices, but often in spite of them. That's a very different message than "be like these people." It's closer to, this is what happens in a broken world, and even here, a bigger story is still moving forward. Genesis 19 isn't a story to be comfortable with. It's not meant to be. It sits in Scripture as a raw, unresolved account of trauma, survival instinct gone wrong, and generational consequence. The kind of story that forces you to ask hard questions instead of handing you easy answers. Was it justified? No serious reading of the text suggests it was. Was it understandable, given what these women had just survived? That's a conversation worth having, and the text itself seems to leave open. If you want more of the Bible stories that never make it into Sunday sermons, subscribe to Controverse, because Scripture is bolder, stranger, and more honest than most people realize. See you in the next one.